Hi everyone, my name is Ava and I'm an American living in the Netherlands. And today I wanted to talk about some differences in getting married between the US and the Netherlands. And the reason for that is because yours truly is getting married. And that's pretty exciting, which means that my Dutch girlfriend will become Dutch wife, Dutch spouse. Jury's out on the name yet. Well, whatever we decide, we are taking the next step in our relationship. And in this video, I wanted to start with telling you about our story because I love sharing things with you. And then afterwards, I will go into some cultural and legal differences between the two countries. And then I wanted to end with our future plans. But this is a good point to mention that if you would like more updates, follow me on Instagram. I've been more active on there lately, so you can be as up to date as possible. So with that out of the way, I wanted to start by saying that my girlfriend and I have been together for almost 7 years at this point, which sounds incredibly long. Like, I never thought I would date anyone for 7 years, let alone be with someone for 7 years and then continue to want to be with them to the point where we're getting married. So it is very special, and I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that because I cannot believe I just found someone who happens to tolerate all of my flaws, and I think she's great. So, it's fantastic. It worked out. For those of you who don't know our story, we met in the US about 8 years ago when my girlfriend, who is Dutch and has lived in the Netherlands for most of her life, at that point had only lived in the Netherlands, had moved to the US, and we met. And then a year later, we started dating. And then at some point, we decided to move to the Netherlands together. And I've been living in the Netherlands for 3 years now with my Dutch girlfriend, who is soon to be something else. And people keep asking us how the moment happened and the proposal. And first of all, there's that question of how did you decide who was going to propose to whom? And well, I have to say that in my circle, there are many people who don't even do that. They sort of just go, okay, you want to get married? Yes. And then they go get married. And then they tell us, hey, by the way, we decided to get married. Spontaneous surprise. And that's happened quite a bit in the past. They got married and not many of them had this engagement stage, at least in our circle. And I will talk a bit more about that later. So for us, it was interesting to see how we were going to go about doing this. And when we had this conversation about who was going to propose to who, I felt like, well, because I am more ready for this concept of marriage and this step, then I was going to put the ball in her court. So I just said, when you feel like enough time has passed and that you really want to take this step, you can let me know. And already after a couple of years of having the same conversation over and over, in a sense that, checking in to see how we felt about it, when was the right time to do it, I never felt like that was not in the future for us. And from what I could gather from her side, that was also the same. But we still decided that she was going to be the one to pop the question, so to speak. And then last year we were talking about COVID, our lives together. We had moved to the Netherlands. So there was also that question of where we were going to end up when we were dating in the US. There are uncertainties in a relationship, and that was one of ours. But when it seemed like, we were going to be in one place, long distance was not going to be part of our relationship. We were just here and settled. And at that point, it just felt right. And we'd had those conversations. So all of this to say that when she was going to pop the question, it was never going to be this huge surprise because we talked about everything. Oh my God, we talk about so many things. Like, our relationship is just talking, and watching Netflix. So So it was actually interesting that it was a little bit of a surprise, even though I just said it wasn't going to be completely a surprise. It was a tiny bit of a surprise when that happened. And that actually happened when we were on a trip in Belgium together. I actually made a vlog when we were there. So when we were there, she wrote me a letter saying how happy she was in our relationship and how she was ready to take the next step. And you're probably wondering, okay, was there a ring involved, et cetera, et cetera. No, I don't wear jewelry. And she asked me because she was like, okay, I'm going to propose. How does one do that? And I think this is a completely legitimate question because I think as a woman, you don't grow up thinking you're going to be popping the question, so you don't have ideas about it. And you also are not socialized to think about what goes into it, what is needed, etc. So and we talk about everything. So she asked me, so what would you like? Because she wanted it to be special for me. It was very sweet. And I immediately said, jewelry does not make any sense because I don't wear jewelry and I don't know what I would do with it, even if it was the most beautiful engagement ring ever. So we agreed that wasn't going to happen. And then she asked me what I wanted. And I was the one who suggested that I would like a letter because I don't know what's wrong with me. I thought that was really romantic, and I still think that's really romantic. And when she did it, I was very happy. There were no tears. There wasn't a moment of shock or surprise because I knew this was coming. But the funny thing is, I saw this envelope in her suitcase when we were in Belgium, and I picked it up, was like, babe, what is this? And then she just goes, oh my God, you ruined everything. So I basically just ruined the surprise, whereas she was going to find a nice moment, a dinner or something to give me this letter. And while unpacking our suitcase in our hotel room, I was just like, oh, what is this letter? And so that's how it happened. And it was really beautiful. And I immediately felt so excited. And I think we both did. And I keep saying I think because I really don't want to speak for another person. Again, I've talked about the lesbian urge to merge, but we are really very much two separate people. So if you look back at the Ghent vlog and you're wondering why there's a big smile on my face, it's first of all because I'm talking to you. And second, because of this news, because it happened right at the beginning of the trip. It was a really very special trip. So I will tell you about our plans to get married in a little bit, but first I want to talk about the differences between the US and the Netherlands. Now, one thing that stood out to me sort of more in the beginning as opposed to right now, and I'm curious to hear your opinion on this, is this concept of being engaged. Now, when I moved to the Netherlands and initially started getting to know Dutch people, it was at that point where people weren't really getting engaged. So I just heard opinions around me. And at that point, people were saying how engagement is more of a thing in the US and not in the Netherlands. And I thought that was interesting because in the US, it's a huge deal. When you get engaged, there's of course a ring involved and people scrutinize the ring. And there's this old saying that goes, the ring needs to be 2 months of the dude's salary. That's the traditional concept of it. And that's a lot. And then there's the proposal itself. The proposal itself, it needs to be this grand gesture, as cute, as romantic as you can make it. And it's really supposed to be this big moment that culminates in, I don't know, fireworks or tears. There needs to be something explosive. And that makes for a good, juicy proposal because everyone in the US is going to ask you about it. Everyone. People who you don't know might see your ring and say, oh my God, you got engaged. Tell me everything. And that's great, right? It's a nice momentous occasion to celebrate in your lives. That's not what we did, but I enjoy hearing these engagement stories because it's nice. Why not celebrate something nice? But then what follows that period is also this period of calling each other your fiance. Now, while I have actually seen a number of people getting engaged in almost the same way as people get engaged in the US, so that's happened in the Netherlands too. So at that point, I'm starting to wonder, hey, is this catching on, or was engagement already a thing in the Netherlands and maybe people are just more split in how they view this? But I really haven't heard people call their partners in the Netherlands after the engagement their verloofde, which is the Dutch word for fiance. So I haven't really heard that. I don't know if it's very common. I've just heard people say my girlfriend or boyfriend or partner and we're getting married. So those two things are sort of separate. Whereas in the US, you have been upgraded to fiance. Congratulations. Now, another reason for if there is a difference between the US and the Netherlands in terms of getting engaged, like I said, I want to hear your opinions because I don't have enough data points for this. But one of the reasons I do see the difference between the two countries is because in the Netherlands, it is actually pretty common to get something called a geregistreerd partnerschap, which is a domestic partnership. Now, in the US, this is very different. The reason for why this is different, and I'm going to talk about a couple of different things that have to be prefaced with the fact that the Netherlands is one country. The United States is just that, a bunch of states put together. So each state actually has their own rules and their own laws around this. So a domestic partnership isn't something that's available in every state in the US, while it is available. You may also have a civil union, which is different from a domestic partnership. I did not know. I had to look it up for this video. In the Netherlands, this geregistreerd partnerschap, the domestic partnership, is one thing that applies to everyone who lives in the Netherlands. So if they choose to get it, And many straight people also get this registered partnership. And I don't know why, because it just seems to be an alternative to getting married. I don't think it's cheaper. I don't think there's much of a difference between the two. The only difference that I was able to find was that in the Netherlands, you don't need to go to court to dissolve your domestic partnership. Whereas if you are married, you need to go to court. Unless there are kids involved, they need to go to court for both. And then this registered partnership in the Netherlands may not be applicable in other countries. So in the US, some states don't even have this domestic partnership. It may not be seen as equivalent. And then there's this civil union. It's all very interesting. Now, in the US, a domestic partnership or civil union was created so that same-sex partners could have some rights. And these rights also differ per state. So a domestic partnership in one state could have different benefits than a domestic partnership in another state. Thankfully, that matters slightly less now because same-sex marriage since 2015 has been nationally legalized in the US. So if I were to make my relationship legally official in the US, I would choose to do the marriage path because it just seems easier, it's valid everywhere. It's a bit strange to have a status in one state that doesn't carry over to another state within the same country. In the Netherlands, same-sex marriage was legalized in 2001, first country to do that. Praise the Netherlands. And I think it's interesting because in the Netherlands, you have this geregistreerd partnerschap that heterosexual couples also make use of. And I guess they were just like, this seems great. Why do marriage when you can do this? I still don't know what that decision-making process is, and I'm not quite familiar with the difference between the two. I know in one sense there could be a religious ceremony associated with it, and maybe in a registered partnership, you don't have that. But to me, I don't know how I would go about making that choice. For us, it was simple because I wanted our relationship to also have the same status in the United States. So I thought marriage was going to be the easy way. So now let us talk about the process of actually getting married in the Netherlands and in the US. It's similar and different. So in the Netherlands, if you want to get married, you have to do a ondertrouw, which is declare your intention to get married to the municipality that you live in. Isn't that fabulous? So when you do that, you need to wait 2 weeks before you can actually get married. So that 2-week period is valid. So this applies to everybody in the Netherlands. In the US, this differs per state. From what I can tell, in every single state, you need a marriage license, which is similar to the ondertrouw, your intention to get married. So that's interesting. The other thing that's interesting is that the time between when you get your marriage license and when you can have the marriage ceremony differs per state again. So for instance, in New York, it's 24 hours. In other states, it could be 72 or so on. In Las Vegas, because when you talk about getting married in the US, Las Vegas probably pops to mind. Now, the reason it's so easy to get married in Las Vegas is because you can get your marriage license. You still have to get your marriage license, but then there is no waiting period. So you could immediately go to the chapel, resort, wherever, and have that Elvis wedding without any time period in between. You don't have to think about it. You know, you could just boom, boom, get it done, and you're married. Congratulations. Okay, now with all of that said, what are we going to do? First of all, we're getting married pretty soon. We are going to have a party in the Netherlands. We've decided that. And I'm calling it party. People find this funny, but it's not a traditional wedding ceremony, wedding party. You know, we're not going to have a wedding in the lawn. It's going to be in the winter. So pretty soon. We're actually having this party in the next few weeks. So right now I am very stressed. Yeah, pretty close to Christmas too, so that's interesting. And in terms of getting married, so it's a little bit complicated because if you are in the Netherlands and you are Dutch and you have all your paperwork, and you're just registered with the municipality, like full-fledged registered with the municipality, they have all of your details, then it's really easy to do this ondertrouw and get married. However, if you are international, there's always more paperwork. That is just part and parcel of moving somewhere. So for me, I needed to have an apostille on my birth certificate, and that proved to be more difficult for me to obtain. So what we're gonna do is actually go sign the papers in the United States. I know, how interesting is that? And we hope that everything goes smoothly and all of this can take place the next couple of months. My fingers are crossed that nothing goes wrong when we try to sign the papers in the US. Otherwise, we're gonna get this apostille when we're there, and hopefully we'll be able to do it here in the Netherlands. So I guess sometime in the next several weeks, suddenly in one of my videos, I will call my Dutch girlfriend something else, and that will be extremely interesting. Until then, don't forget to subscribe and follow me on Instagram if you wanna stay updated, and also, of course, to get notified when I make new videos.